Hello, this is part 23 of our comparative Bible study on the beginning of Jesus Galilean Ministry. During this part, I would like to introduce a new subsection where Jesus is asked questions about the Sabbath. Overall, this is our 63rd New Testament Bible study. Once again, the events that we plan to discuss are covered by accounts from the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which appear to be discussing the same events. The Gospel of John appears to be silent with regard to this period of time. As we transition into this new subsection, I think it would be good to compare how the different Gospels arranged the events. During recent Bible studies, especially in New Testament Bible Study 60, I shared observations of what looked like a mini-series of where the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke covered the same events in the same order without anything in between, all matching up event for event. Here, the Gospels of Mark and Luke transition directly from that mini-series of events to this new subsection where Jesus is being asked questions about the Sabbath. On the other hand, the Gospel of Matthew does not make that direct transition. The Gospel of Matthew instead goes on to discuss over 2 chapters of information in between that mini series of events and the Sabbath questions that Jesus will be asked. Although it appears that some of this information may be unique to the Gospel of Matthew, other information appears to be similar to accounts that are discussed later in the Gospels of Mark and Luke. I've seen commentary hypothesizing that the Gospel of Matthew may be arranged by topic as opposed to chronological order. Many have observed that the Gospel of Matthew covers 5 major discourses. It appears to me that some of the information contained in those 5 discourses in the Gospel of Matthew appears to be a little bit more spread out in the other Gospels. These discourses are great references which seem to consolidate similar information together. The first major discourse that many refer to in the Gospel of Matthew is the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is at least 3 chapters long, and as I've mentioned in previous Bible studies, I'm trying to defer talking about it until I can get to some more comparable verses in the other Gospels. The second major discourse that many reference is Jesus basically providing instructions to his disciples on missionary work. The Gospel of Matthew locates this second major discourse within the 2+ chapters between the mini series of events that we've been discussing in recent Bible studies and this new subset on Sabbath questions asked to the Lord Jesus. As also mentioned in New Testament Bible Study 60, different people may try to harmonize the Gospels in different ways. So far as we've been working our way through Jesus Galilean Ministry, I have been trying to follow along with the Gospel of Luke, working in accounts from other Gospels as it seems appropriate. So far, this seems to be a pretty neat way to go through the Gospels, and the Gospel of Mark has matched up really closely, it appears, to the Gospel of Luke. Thank you for allowing me the time to work through that. The next thing I'd like to discuss in this Bible study is just to briefly recap some relevant information from the previous mini-series of events, and then transition into this new subsection of Jesus being challenged with Sabbath questions. In what I'm calling a previous mini-series of events, the first thing that happened was that Jesus again re-entered the city of Capernaum and healed a man with palsy. Relevant to this Bible study, there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which came out of every town of Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem. As discussed in New Testament Bible Study 56, This is the first time that we're told of Jesus interacting with Pharisees during his Galilean ministry. At least that's the way it's appearing to me as we compare these verses. Prior to Jesus' Galilean ministry, we had discussed how Pharisees were dispatched to inquire about John the Baptist when he was baptizing in the wilderness. And I'd asked the question, could the same thing be happening here? Because these Pharisees and scribes would question the Lord Jesus' ability to forgive sins. Then they would go on to question the Lord Jesus again when he was eating with publicans and sinners after Jesus had called the apostle Matthew or Levi to himself. Then, following that, Jesus would once again be questioned why his disciples were not fasting when the Pharisees and John the Baptist's disciples were fasting often. During New Testament Bible Study 62, I essentially observed that it seemed like the Lord Jesus was being questioned a lot during this mini series of events, and it seems that the Pharisees had a lot to do with it. So then, after the Lord Jesus had answered this last question about fasting with some parables, we can next move on from these parables to the next event that we would like to discuss. As mentioned earlier in our Bible study, notice how the Gospels of Mark and Luke will go directly into the next event or subset, and the Gospel of Matthew will jump from chapter 9 to chapter 12. Let's start comparing the first couple of verses from this subset of events in each of the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Let's start with Matthew chapter 12. There we read, "At that time Jesus went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were an hungered, and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day." So here once again we have the Pharisees challenging the Lord Jesus. Could it be the same group of Pharisees from all over Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem? At this point, does it appear that these Pharisees are following the Lord Jesus around, trying to find fault? The Gospel of Mark reads similarly. There we read, "And it came to pass that he went through the cornfields on the Sabbath day, and his disciples began, as they went, to pluck the ears of corn. And the Pharisees said unto him, Behold, why do they on the Sabbath day that which is not lawful?" As mentioned at the beginning of the Bible study, the subject that Jesus is being questioned about is with respect to the Sabbath day. The Gospel of Luke contains a little bit of additional information. There we read, "And it came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first, that he went through the cornfields, and his disciples plucked the ears of corn, and did eat, rubbing them in their hands. And certain of the Pharisees said unto them, Why do ye that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath days?" Comparing these three accounts, both the Gospels of Luke and Matthew contain information about eating and to eat and did eat. So doesn't this sound like they were eating them as they went along the way as opposed to doing a harvest? The Gospel of Luke also gives us the additional information that they were rubbing them in their hands. It seemed like I read some commentary that these were basically corns of wheat, and this is like separating the wheat from the chaff maybe. Furthermore, this King James Version and some other versions have some curious language here. Second Sabbath after the first. There's a lot of commentary about this phrase or similar phrases in other versions. It appears the underlying Greek text that this is translated from is only used here. Lord willing, maybe we can discuss this and other things in a future Bible study. Let's stop here for now. If I was blessed with sharing anything good, glory to the Lord. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.